mentioned you kind of wish that Big Ten Media Days was this week. Is it just Is it just you want it to go right after? Like, I know Big 12 Media Days got us all a little fired up. You just ready to go for football now, or why do you want it a week early?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just ready. I'm like ready to talk football and ready to hear from Rhule and the three players and Matt Rhule, a good guy to listen to talk about football and just talk about the sport in general and everything at large. He's just a pleasure to listen to, and because he's usually thought of something in July that you don't even think he's going to talk about, and then he does, and he answers the questions pretty well. So this week's SEC Media Days, I'm going to watch some of that. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited to see what that league has in store. I'm not sure they know for sure in the SEC what the pecking order is coming into this season. I guess Georgia's at the top, but I don't know that. Yeah, Georgia and Texas, right? But man, after that, I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing a million things about Florida, and maybe they're the team. So I'm the AP voter again this year for the state, and so I've got to try to track through everything, kind of piece through things. Is Florida a top 25 team? Is South Carolina a top 25 team? Is Missouri a top 25 team? That kind of stuff.
So how much do you think at Big Ten Media Days, judging by all the changes in the sport over the last even few weeks, how much, Matt Rhule is very philosophical. I think he's got that reputation nationally as well. Like, how much of his time do you think is going to be spent answering those types of questions? Because I think you're right, even outside of the state, I think a lot of people want to know what he thinks about this, because he's been sort of talking about this even before any decisions were made.
It wouldn't surprise me if it comprises all of his time at the podium, the main podium. I don't know what the setup's going to be until we get there, but I think that probably take up some of his time. And certainly off to the side, there'll be people that want his opinion on the sport. And I don't know that there's a ton of mystery about this team. Now, you're always going to have people that go to Vegas and they're like, tell me about the second left tackle. What are you thinking there? Whatever, that's fine. And I'm not trying to knock it, because I care about the second left tackle too. I think I would just say that, I have a pretty good sense of where this team thinks it's at and where it could be at. And, there's probably some lingering questions about the offensive line. But, again, I think that question is going to get answered, and part of the job of the journalist to put all that stuff in context and not get too far in the weeds, but also, give you a few weeds, because Husker fans like that.
All right, so getting into the weeds of what you hope to see when you get to Big Ten Media Days, I know you wrote last week about some of the Big Ten coaches that are going to be on the hot seat. Which one of those are you most, I don't want to say excited, but which one are you interested in to hear what they have to say about their upcoming team and kind of maybe the stress that they have coming into the season?
Lincoln Riley. I think, he's got some players on his team. I think he inherited an interesting situation there at USC where they were pretty good right away because they brought some transfers in and they had some guys left over, but that, years of so-so recruiting by Clay Helton meant that Lincoln Riley was going to have to kind of rebuild it. Now, what's interesting about USC is they're just about ready to build, to open that football palace, so they're going to have their own building. They hired a GM away from Notre Dame who, in my opinion, is attached to the AD as much as, if not more, than Riley. So there's a lot of intrigue around that program. That program is going to be good. I'm just telling you right now. USC is going to be good. I just don't know who's the coach going to be, because they could go 7-5 this year, and the AD there could say, you know what, we're going with a different kind of coach. We're going after James Franklin, and he could do it there. That kind of thing. But if they go 8-4, 9-3 this year, he's probably going to stick it out, and then they're going to get good. I think USC is going to be around. I'm not saying they're going to get on top of Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan and Oregon, but I think USC is going to be around, and I think they're going to be a bear. And I think Nebraska's probably going to be glad they got him in the first 2 years of the Big Ten, because he gets this thing next year and the year after. I don't think it's going to matter who the coach is. I think they're going to be really good. So Lincoln Riley, and then I get a kick a little bit out of Luke Fickell because he is unbelievably transparent. He knows he's in trouble. They have the hardest schedule in the country. bar none. No SEC schedule's harder. And, he's just got a kind of matter of fact, like, holy crap, and so, like, he is so much like Bill Callahan, it's not even funny. Like, what he took over for Paul Chryst, and Chryst was a lot like Frank Solich in that he had a ton of success, A, and B, it was probably not going in the right direction when they both got let go. In fact, with Paul Chryst, it wasn't. I think if you had given Frank 3 more years, I would have been really intrigued to see how it gone, but I'm not sure that it would have gone to 11-1, 11-1, and 11-1 in 04 and 05 and 06. And so Luke Fickell comes in, just like Bill Callahan did, and changes everything about the offense and realizes that, Bill Callahan never realized this. Fickell realized it was a huge mistake about, 20 games in. And so it's fascinating to me that now he has to try to re-engineer it, but he has to do it against the hardest schedule in the country. They could go 5-7 and be dang good. And so we'll just have to see how it all unfolds and whether or not the AD there is patient, because I'm not sure he will be.
See, you've got me interested now because you talked like USC. It sounds like you're pretty high on them just as a program. Like their stock is moving up. Where are you with Illinois? Because it seems like in terms of the recruiting battlefield and everything that they're starting to get a couple of guys that, yes, some in-state or some guys that maybe people wouldn't really, shake their head to if they chose to go one way or the other. But it feels like Bielema's got them really going in the right direction. And I think maybe they're teetering away from just being that underdog that everyone always assumes that they'll be to kind of being a program that's maybe more of an annual contender or like one of those just that tier below the elites in the Big Ten?
It's a good point. I mean, I think this year will tell a lot. I think they come back with a lot of pieces intact, but they lost a couple of key players too. They lost their best receiver. That's not going to help. They lost one of their running backs. They lost a lineman. I will be intrigued to see now that Illinois is not going to sneak up on anybody. And they snuck up a little bit on Kansas and Nebraska. Both the teams, I think, frankly had more talent than Illinois. But Illinois kind of outcoached them and outplayed them. And so this year, Illinois will not have any of that. They will have to play the games even up. They're going to play Indiana, I think, relatively early in the season. That game will tell a lot, I think. I do. I think they have an opportunity to be an 8 or a 9 win team with some regularity, depending on whether they can get the quarterback and they can get the breaks and they can get some of the pieces in place. To be clear, Lovie Smith left behind good players. Lovie was a good recruiter. He did not recruit the state of Illinois very well, but he recruited Florida, and so Lovie is an incredible talent evaluator, and so he left players for that. A lot of the guys they've been doing this with were Lovie's guys. Now, Brett took over in 21, and yes, he's recruited a number of the players, don't get me wrong. But, a lot of those guys were, either on Lovie's radar or they were Lovie's guys, and now that's all sort of, matriculated out, and now they're going to have to do it with Brett's guys, and I think they're going to be pretty good. I just don't know if I think they're going to win 10 games. I think they've got good players. I think we'll see much more this season, whether they can carry it to another year with like a 10-win campaign. I would be surprised, but you never know.
Sam, you said something a minute ago that I just keep coming back to here during your Lincoln Riley answer, and you brought up if he gets let go. I know James Franklin's been tied to that job over and over and over again, right? I guess my immediate thought was just we're not USC fans, obviously, and not in their media contingent, but is James Franklin a better coach than Lincoln Riley?
I think what he's been able to now achieve at Penn State in terms of the consistency of their defenses across many coordinators, I think the standard of play, the physicality with which they play with, I think it fits the Big Ten really well. Franklin, I think in the past maybe hasn't taken that job because the whatever you want to call it, the fundamentals of it weren't that good. They did not have a football building, for example. Now they're going to. I think there was a lot of uncertainty in the leadership. I mean, the last AD that preceded Jen Cohen was kind of fired. Like he left. I don't know. It was whatever you want to call it. They had obviously that weird scandal with the I don't know, the actors' daughters and all. I can't remember the whole thing with the pay to go to school thing. And so, I think there were fundamentals around USC football that just weren't very good, and I think they're getting a lot better. And I think it would just be intriguing. Another person that would consider that job potentially would be a Marcus Freeman. That he would be intrigued by that. I'm just saying that that program is.
No, it's a big time job. It's a big time job.
It's going in the right direction. It is. Now their stadium's a little old, but it's actually pretty cool. And they're going in the right direction. And I think Nebraska, if you were to sit down with Rhule, I think he would have great insight on all these programs they faced last year. And I think he'd keep coming back to, man, this league is really good, and we got to do everything we can do to keep an edge, because you can't expect to welcome USC. Even though USC lost at Maryland and Minnesota last year, you can't think USC is going to come here and kick rocks, and you can't think you're going out to UCLA in the Rose Bowl and just rolling over. They're going to roll over. They're not going to do that. So at this point, from Nebraska's perspective, every program, with maybe the exception of Purdue, is rocking and rolling. Maybe Maryland, they're all rocking and rolling. And so Nebraska can't really take anything for granted. But in the big picture of the Big Ten, I think USC has the firepower and the money to make dents. They have the corporate relationships out there, to make impacts that are harder to make at schools where there isn't as much corporate power around it. So I'll be really intrigued to see how they play this year. Again, I'm not saying they're going to be great this year. They could be 7-5 this year. But where it's going up. And I think Nebraska's going to have to keep that in mind as they move forward.
So, Sam, I was on this kick a couple of months ago, I think, when I was hosting with Ravi, but which Big Ten or college football, maybe a coaching carousel, do you think would be triggered more by which coach leaving? Either Lincoln Riley having USC and his job open up, or Ryan Day leaving to the NFL and leaving Ohio State open? Which one do you think has more chance for a more fallout across the conference and college football?
It's a great question. I think I've said this to Damon. If Ryan Day leaves Ohio State having won a national championship, I would assume that Ohio State will pursue Marcus Freeman, who played at Ohio State. So your next job open would be Notre Dame, and then it trickles from there. Mm-hmm. If Lincoln Riley gets let go, and they're going to have to go out and search. I don't know that USC knows who the first call would be. If it were me, my first call would be like Sean McVay. I'd be like, do you want to stop coaching the Rams and come over here to USC, where the fan base is better and it's kind of like the NFL now? Do you want to do that? And that's what I think USC needs to chew on. It's okay, well, who do we want to go get who can come in here and handle the LA market and the media? And Sean McVay obviously could do that. If you weren't going to go in that direction and you weren't going to go pick a McVay, then you would do something like, okay, here's the short list. Who can we get? Who wants to come here? Last time they got Lincoln Riley, which was a highly coveted coach. So who would it be this time? So, I think my sense is Ryan Day leaving would be the larger of the two. I just don't think Ryan Day is going to leave. There was an opportunity to do that in this offseason. And there were jobs. I'm not saying they were perfect jobs, but they were good enough jobs. Now, if he had really wanted to throw his hat into the Patriots ring, he probably could have. I'm not saying he would have beat out Vrabel. Frankly, I think Vrabel's a better head coach, but he could have put his hat into that. He could have put his hat into other rings too. If he had back channeled and said, "Hey, I'm interested in the Jets," I think he'd have gotten the job. Hey, I'm interested in the Giants. I think they would have fired Brian Daboll and hired Ryan Day. There's lots of things he could have done, and he just didn't do any of those things. So I think he's there. I think it's a big operation. I think he's good at it. He survived the 1 year with Chip Kelly. They won a title. I think he had two unique, brilliant coordinators last year who probably weren't the best fits for him as a person. And so now those guys have moved on. And he's got some new guys in there. They're probably going to fit him better. I think their offense is probably going to be a little bit better as a result. And those two guys are going to go do great jobs where they're at, and away it'll go. So, I mean, I think Ohio State's going to be really good again. They'll be in the playoff. Whether they win it or not, I think, is kind of up to how good that quarterback, whichever quarterback they play, is.
Sam, is there a guy at Big Ten Media Days? Obviously, you're going to talk to Nebraska and their guys. Is there a guy that you are either interested in hearing from or would like to get some questions in on?
Oh, the player list is, is what it is. I do always like listening to James Franklin. He's very smart and he's intense, but he's specific. Drew Aller, I think, will be an interesting guy to listen to because I think there's similarities between him and Raiola. Not necessarily size and playing style, but just their personalities. I don't think it's like Dylan's number one task to go out there and bark at everybody, and I think Aller's kind of the same way. They're both 5 stars, but, I don't know that they necessarily like screaming at everybody. So I'll like listening to him. That they have the best team. Penn State has the best team. I don't know. It just kind of depends on. I think we're going to only be there the first 2 days. I think Oregon's on the first or second day, and Lanning is a good listen. Like, and Riley's an interesting listen. Lincoln Riley's really, really sharp. He's kind of corporate, so like he's kind of corporate, but he's pretty sharp. I wouldn't put him on the Matt Rhule level of insight, but like he's the one that said last year in the Big Ten Media Days, he said it's going to be interesting to watch Ryan Day and Chip Kelly work together. Now he just kind of said it all apropos of really nothing, but he was right. Like there's things he knows that like you just kind of know. And then he was the guy that I think pushed hardest for the College Football Hall of Fame to change the rules so Mike Leach could get in. So like there's things about him that I understand why people don't always like love the guy, but like he's sharp, and so I like listening to him. Fickle. Ferentz says very little. But it's fun to watch him interact with the reporters because everything is a history lesson. He knows everybody standing in front of him pretty well. They've all been talking to him for 15 years. He's been talking to them, and he gets kind of a wry smile on his face sometimes, where he's answered this question from this reporter 7 other times. Like so there's a rapport there that I kind of appreciate. When I got to the World Herald, was the first year Nebraska was in the Big Ten, and I remember going, and there were some coaches that were just a couple of long-timers, including Bielema and Paterno, who was still there, and just to watch kind of the people around him, it was just a different market back then. It was kind of an old-school group of reporters who had been doing it for 30 years, and so you watch that report, and it was just different. And now it's younger, and I like that too. But I just appreciate Ferentz because the beat pool around him is a little bit older, and he's been there since '99.
All right, Sam, you want to put on your guessing hat here. Who do you think will have the most viral moment? Because obviously last year we had the UCLA's in Los Angeles. A couple years ago, obviously the Frost quotes and whatnot. But do you have an inkling? Do you have a prediction? You are in Vegas after all, so I don't think you want to put any money on that. But do you have an idea of which coach you think will have the most outlandish statement or do something unique?
Bielema, probably.
That's always a good bet.
He's been pretty outspoken this season, too. This offseason, he's been going after some guys online.
Well, and he also, I think Las Vegas, holds a fond place in his heart. So, I think it does. Like that's where he met his wife. So, like I think that's that's notable to him, and I think he'll be like, hey, I really like Las Vegas. Glad we're here. Like he'll say something like that, and. Deshaun Foster, I'm kind of rooting for him. I think last year, whatever he was trying to be funny, and boy, it didn't work because whoever is the Big Ten does not do funny well. Nobody wants
pretty dry too.
Yeah.
Oh God,
his delivery was a little off. Yeah, he didn't really have it all going.
I was like, he was trying to be funny, and then later he was whatever. And then, I'm like, this guy's going to get fired in the first year. But then all of a sudden they rally, and they start winning games, and it's like this guy's got some fire to him, and I like that about him. Like he willed that team to some wins down the stretch. So he'll probably go there this year and say something humorous. it'll probably be dry, but you're kind of rooting for him. Like he's got a little bit of he needs a chance to get it on the other side, and I just wonder if this season they're gonna improve or they're gonna fall back and go to 3-9 or something.